let's go.
No problem.
So, Niki, thank you for being with us for this interview. We'll do an interview. I was just wondering, actually, the first question is, do you like to go to a festival and talk about your work and everything like that? Or
That's a good question. I mean, I do like to visit festivals, and I do like to speak about my work. But it's also like a bit of embarrassment included as well to just like sit around and speak about your. It's a little bit uncomfortable, but it's it's also fun. It's just fun to be. I'm just super happy to be back years, obviously. So. That's great.
so we are in a Forum des Images for Carrefour de l'Animation
Yes.
in Paris, and so yesterday we had this meeting, and I'm asking you that question is because your film is so open to interpretation, and we can think a lot of because what we feel about the films, that I thought that sometimes to talk about them and to put interpretation maybe on them is not what you want.
No, exactly. I mean, I love to talk about people's interpretations and feelings, and I love to talk about like sort of the idea and the aesthetics and everything. But speaking about the sort of detailed stories, because I have got those questions sometimes. Like the ending, what does it mean? These things, and it's just like, do you really want me to say? Because it's like you're gonna be, it's. I think there should always be some mystery involved. Obviously I have my own ideas about what's going on in my films, but it's I think it's just so interesting that people are experiencing the stories in very different ways and interpreting them in different ways depending on where you're from.
Are you sometimes surprised by the interpretations by the audience? Did you had some funny interpretations?
Yeah, well, I mean, well, not funny maybe, but I think Tord and Tord, my first film, was quite, because I wrote that. I wrote that script based on a short story by Jorunn Burman-Berg, who's an artist, and she worked quite a lot. That was like a part of an artwork that I adapted to a script to this film. But her artwork was quite a lot about mental illness and like a sort of pre-state of schizophrenia, and it's a quite sort of dark subject, and then like a lot of people in Sweden were a bit more like, yeah, they're friends, then he left, Tord left, and it's while I'm maybe a bit more interested in the idea about like, is it two persons, is it one, like what's real and what's not, and it's I mean it's I don't really mind that you interpret it in different ways. It's just kind of interesting how you maybe it's about like where you come from. Maybe everyone doesn't have that kind of darkness within them. Just like okay.
Or maybe it's what you said. Sorry, but what you said yesterday. It's also because it's animation, and if we had two
Yes.
actors, for example, talking to each other and do that, maybe it will be not the same interpretation for those people.
Totally, and like I said yesterday about like the Swedish animation culture, which is very much connected to children's culture. Like we don't have really adult animation in the same way as in many other countries, where animation is much more a part of the, it gets to be like in the real cultural atmosphere, like highbrow culture, and Sweden is much more like, oh, it's a rabbit and he has a pants and it's so much fun, so it's much more lightweight, I'd say, and while in Annecy people were just like dead silence all through the screening, and we're just like, oh, it's very Kafka, very Kafka. So it was very interesting for me to just experience the differences between different countries.
Okay. Yesterday we didn't have time to talk about something that's really important. I guess it's the realistic where you try to do the puppets, and but And for me, it's interesting because we use a lot the anthropomorphic, thing. But I don't know why. For me, it's different. I mean, you're not working. I think for me, it's a real rabbit. With, I mean, I don't know, with, being a rabbit, but then he has something more human in it, or a wolf, something like that. And that's really, really strange. That's really something that belongs to your cinema. To have this, okay, that's not like, a cartoon like that, the rabbit or the cars, in Pixar, thing like that. It's like they will have eyes like humans.
No.
So I don't know how to explain it, but that's really something strong, I guess, in your cinema. I don't know if you think about that when you...
Well, I mean, I try to avoid the sort of cartoonish like way of portraying animals. I think, but I do think that working with animal characters in my films has a little. I mean, both. I think it's easier to identify yourself with the characters because they don't have that many like human attributes, or how you say it. I mean, like obviously clothing and stuff, but I really want for the audience to feel like these characters could be like you or me or anyone, and just being exposed to a certain situation so for me the animal look is very much a part of neutralizing the characters, but also just adding some silliness into often quite dark subjects, so that it's not. I think like having like in Something to Remember, having like a snail taking its blood pressure at the doctor's office and singing about eternal sadness and things like that. It's it's a little bit more, it's more silly than if it would be like a human puppet, but it's also I just think it adds to like the fun of it all, the fun of just things being so like, fucked up, in the world, and just the sadness of being alive and with all, but it's also a bit silly, everything. You need to be able to have that filter.
And the silliness is not to put arms on the snail or legs, because of course
No,
they
exactly.
still that's what is interesting. It's real animals. I mean,
yeah, and I think I worked a bit more towards like real animals in my most recent films, because at first I worked a lot with almost human arms and legs, but more like an animal head, but now I find it much more sort of interesting in trying to sort of squeeze in like an actual animal shape into like human, like forcing human clothing on like a duck or no, sorry, not a duck, but a dove and or a snail or like beetles and stuff like that, and just making the appearance of the animal much less human, but it's still sort of forced into that human shape and that human situation. And I also think that also adds something to just the way, life just being sort of playing a human, with all this like attributes like clothing and all this sort of civilization being sort of forced upon us sometimes. Just add something.
Do you try different things when you think about the animals you're gonna make, or do you always know what kind of animal you need for each sequence?
Well, I kind of usually decide the animal species before. Yeah, it's not that I'm thinking this one should work for this shot, because I think it's much more fun that it's a bit of a surprise to me as well. Like, okay, it's a snail at a doctor's office. Yeah, why not? You just try to force, like it's a little bit of the thing, I think, to try and sort of force these kind of situations together. But I do have like different themes on choosing animal species. I mean, for example, in Bathhouse, it's animal species that are like very sort of newly distincted. I mean, they don't exist anymore, and I also try to choose animal species that are not really, they were not really known to people, and then they were just like we just kill them off, you know. So it's a bit sad. I did some Googling on sort of very sort of, what do you say, like obscure animal species that are not with us anymore. I just thought that like these sort of weird examples of the animal kingdom sort of being in this public bathhouse was just, just sort of, I enjoyed that somehow.
So just it comes with a story. So when you have that, for example, you say, okay, that's going to be a story about people, because in bathhouse, like, there is almost no future. I mean, for me, when I look at it, it's like, this is no future for anyone. I mean, it's not any character. So maybe, I don't know, it's like, okay, that's that kind of universe. So I will have some,
It's a little bit of hopelessness, I think, within those characters and within that venue. And also in the burden, like I choose animal species that are very, and that's also something about, because I do have a quite, like one of the subjects for that film is like sort of pointless work and like the sort of just pointlessness of many things in life, like the sort of existential anxiety, sort of micro and macro perspective. But I just felt that like just the idea of working at that kind of at this sort of weird shopping center in the middle of the night. I just can't think of like this sort of animals being sort of trapped and just sort of forced into making like humans as well. And also for something to remember, I worked with like animals that are considered as pests, you know, that are not really sort of allowed to exist in the human society, like this kind of killer. Well, in Sweden they're called like, because they sort of eat your garden and therefore they're not allowed to exist. You know, it's very sort of strange, and the sort of city doves and a mole and you know things like that. Yeah, but it's just something that I'm having a bit of fun with. It's not like you're not meant to. Don't need to get that. You know, it's just fun for me.
When we look at something to remember, I must admit that the first time I look at something to remember was like, oh, she's doing a musical again. It's like, you know, after the burden, because you always like try to challenge yourself doing another film, and then I rewatch it again, and then I appreciate it more the second time and the third time, and then watching it, finally it's something new for you, not something to remember. It's something different. I mean, like you said, the fact that you didn't have a lot of time and you didn't think too much about it, and it's like, well,
yeah, exactly. I felt that I had like another sort of music-driven film within me, so I felt that was laid out somehow. It was just like also a very like personal film to me that was maybe like more intuitive and less. I didn't spend like a lot of time writing it. It was more just I just had this because I was just on maternity leave with my daughter for like 6 months before this, and then I just was sort of thrown into a production of this new film, and I just felt that like what I just wrote down what's been sort of going on in my head while being sort of alone with a baby for 6 months, and this very sad and horrible story came out. No, but I think it's like, I think it has something to do with like the sort of random thoughts you get when you're having a child, and also like how to sort of introduce this very strange world to a newborn. So I think that was the kind of theme for the film, like a sort of lullaby before a great disaster.
but that's why it's touching. And if you want to say something, my apologies. Sorry, but that's why it's touching. Also, it's because normally when we saw your film, we don't need the background a lot of time. But when I heard you and when I knew that you did it, after your daughter, and you begin with that, that's the first time there is a kid in your film, actually.
Yes.
And that's the first shot of a grown-up and a kid, and they're looking in a zoo at something, and it's interesting because, like you said, it's like showing to your kid, and in an interview you said, well, sorry for that, but that's our world.
Yeah, but exactly. It's a sort of a, maybe it's some kind of apology to my, it's dedicated to my daughter as well in the end. and also like it was also kind of a it's just a very sort of personal film. I mean, like also I got this sort of chronic disease when I was pregnant, and I all of a sudden I needed to visit hospitals very often compared to never before, and so that was also like a bit of a trauma for me that I could. And it was some kind of therapy as well to sort of rebuild this doctor's office, and it's obviously me, Mr. Snail. It's and I think it was just I kind of used this project as some kind of therapy to myself in a more personal way than before. I had like other needs this time, or how you say it, and but I also had like it, and I felt also like after the burden, it's like how do you even follow up on that film, because it was just booming everywhere, and it felt nice to also like I want to do something shorter, something like less a bit more subtle, and just something for me right now. And but I feel very happy about it actually, and I feel that it's like I had a really like good time making it. I think I was really happy to go back to work as well, and I think that sort of shows in the result. I feel really happy about that film actually.
But I'm telling that because I think that's a film that is more, I mean, you play on the long, normally even the first thought and thought is 10 minutes, which for a first film is not. I mean, we can do that of course, but it's 10 minutes, 15 minutes, it's every time long film, and that's a shorter one.
Yes.
And the shots are much more quicker, but of course we're not fast, playing. But still we are like, you said it's more, I mean, like you said, we feel like it's more enjoyable, and it's like, okay, that's a terrible world we live in, but hey, that's the
also,
world. That's
it's also just a bit stupid and a bit like you just need to laugh at it at some point as well. It's I think I wanted to capture all of that. That sort of like very divided feelings about this whole mess that we created, all of us. So that it's a bit like it's just a bit fun, but also obviously a bit depressing.
but I guess at the end of the burden, it's like, well, for me it's like, okay, when the burden will be lifted, it's like, okay, when we die, it's gonna be all's gonna be okay finally, and it's kind of a beautiful and terrible ending. It's like really strong ending, and when you look at something to remember, you say, okay, well, maybe there is not only dying, and maybe we can do something. I don't know if we can do something, but we.
I mean, I'm not sure that I would sort of. I don't have that kind of like very sort of concrete message about like what to do with all of this. It's just kind of like that maybe we need just to embrace human nature in a way that it's just like inevitable and also a bit sort of entertaining what we're doing right now. But I mean, like I think it's quite important that it can. I mean within all darkness, like in my films, I mean obviously it's it's just supposed to be like it's still entertaining. I think like if you didn't have any darkness, it wouldn't be fun either. It's like you don't have like comedy without the sort of.
Talking about musicals, I really wanted to ask how you write the songs and how you work on the music, because in the two movies it's different. In the first one, the voices are very weird and not very beautiful, and in the second one it's very nice songs and it's very nice singing.
Sorry, in which?
In the Burden and Something to Remember, the two musicals.
Yes. In the Burden it's a bit less. Yeah, it is. I mean, for the Burden, I always collaborated with the Swedish composer Hans Appelqvist, who's he's just like a really sort of great artist and genius himself, and it's like a really pleasure working with him. He also is the sound designer for all of my films. So I I felt that since I didn't work at all with almost with music in my two first films, in Tord and Tord and with Bathhouse, I felt that it because I do get very easily disturbed by music in films. I think that's like, you know, it's so easy to just like destroy everything with like just some randomly, you know, inserted music that's just supposed to underline our feelings in different way, and that annoys me so much. I sort of wanted to like work very little with music to begin with, to just keep the audience a bit unsettled, and it's like they don't really like, do we what is going on? Is it fun? Is it sad? Is it you know, scary? Like it's a bit interesting to not sort of give them any directions with music. But then with The Burden, I just wanted to work with music as a contrast to these kind of depressing venues and you know, working places and everything, and then just make some sort of very fun, you know, like Hollywood musical soundtrack to it. So, you know, like if you would, I just thought about, you know, if you would work as a, you know, as working in a call center, or someone night cleaning in a hamburger restaurant, and you suddenly got like a stage and you were allowed to sing out, like what would you sing about? So that was kind of my my idea. And so I asked Hans to just like listen in a lot to, you know, like West Side Story and Singing in the Rain and this like, you know, Hollywood's golden age kind of musicals, and then just and then I had these ideas about the sort of the pace and the atmosphere of these different chapters, you know, like this is supposed to be a bit upbeat, this is supposed to, or like Busby Berkeley style, this is supposed to be a bit more melancholy, you know, like the he just went all in and made this very sort of like it's very much a hybrid between his very sort of personal style and something that's actually very like broad, very sort of you know, like audience friendly, and like really, you know, like real hit songs. So which is amazing. And we also decided to, like, we had a really lousy budget for that whole film, but we decided to just completely kill the budget right away, because we wanted to we record the music with a sort of live orchestra to get this sort of really authentic Hollywood musical style. So we did record it with a 15-person orchestra, which was amazing. And yeah, so and also I've been collaborating with Martin Luuk, who's like a Swedish comedian and poet, with the lyrics. So he's been writing the lyrics, choosing the words according to my like instructions about what they're supposed to be about, which has also been like, yeah, it's just like a great match. He's just so careful with words, and they're just so sort of, it's just so dry and sometimes naive, but also so like precise. I think he just has a balance that's just amazing.
What you achieve, maybe then we'll talk about something to remember, but what you achieve in Min Borda is we really understand that you love the characters, because it could be funny in a wrong way. You could be making fun of them, like in a calling center, saying you don't need to refund thing, and we understand them, even if sometimes they're calling us, and we are on the other side, like, no, I don't want you, no. But we understand, and like they said, you don't understand my problems, and it's so there
but exactly, that's super important, obviously, to portray these people and this kind of works with some respect, because it's I mean, I've been working a lot as well in this kind of different, very sort of, soulless, boring works, and just putting like endless hours into doing like really sort of depressing stuff. So it's I've been there, and I am there sometimes, as like now as well. But it's I think it's very important to be like to really be on the character's side. I mean, like it's not supposed to be like just laughable. I mean, it's or like distance to anything. I think it's about sort of that you recognize and you can like recognize yourself in them, and that's a huge thing, I think. I mean, otherwise it would be horrible, obviously.
But what's interesting, a lot of Hollywood film, that's, talking not only about empathy, and you need to feel, and it's not your point, because we feel something for the person, for the character, but it's not like you said, they have a story behind you, say, okay, I feel that because they have that trauma or that thing or that. So it's like, really, I mean, that's something that's, I don't know, you do it, or maybe it's like intuitive, like you said, but we care about the characters without knowing too much about them.
But I think they're really just supposed to be mirroring ourselves, really. Like it's if I were in this position, how would I'm just kind of like referring to myself all the time. It's instead of just like, oh, who is this person? What's the background? It's more about just picturing ourselves in their positions and like how we would react to it.
And don't you think it's a way you directed? Or you directing also? There is this wonderful moment in Minborda where, the mice is taking out the garbage, put it aside like that, and we know that the second thing that he's going to do is just put them back. Yeah. It's like, I've got this minute of freedom, this second, but of course not.
Yeah, exactly.
And I guess that's maybe that also is like, okay, we understand them because they have this small gesture that they have.
I mean, I think it's just like a universal kind of human. I'm not sure that I succeed all the time, but I do try to think like that. That it's like, what's like, how do we just like react? It's like, yeah, I want my freedom, but I'm also quite, you are quite a lot a slave just to the situation that you're in, and you can't really, or like to manners or how you're sort of supposed to do things, and it's just it's not easy to get out of, and yeah. So I guess that's why it becomes a bit sort of universal, like my character's sort of behavior.
Diana Dill with thanks on the mic, so we can say thank you to her. Just came into the room, so I think we don't have any more time. It's going to be soon the end. Marie-Pauline, do you have
yes,
last question?
I had one last question. It was about the silence, because yesterday you said something very interesting about how the silence is so important in the movie, and I would like you to tell more about it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I to me it's just that both I'd say definitely in Bathhouse and in Tord and Tord, and also a bit in the house that we'll get back to. But I think silence is a quite it's like the sort of one of the main characters really in the film, and for Bathhouse I really wanted to just because I think that's like when you make films and the films you're watching, it's very much about sort of entertaining and just like filling up each second with content, and just make the most of being like just sort of spraying dialogue and events and things, and I think it's just I really just wanted to try out the opposite to just like, and especially with animation, I think that it's also because like every second is so like precious, obviously, because we need to sort of manufacture it to begin with. So just the way of like you like just having a situation where like seconds and seconds are just passing without anyone speaking, and just being a bit sort of like this odd silence that are just sort of a bit unpleasant, and in Bathhouse, for example, like in the sort of holes in the dialogue between the characters, but also in the house, where this very sort of alone main character is like renovating a big empty house like all by himself day after day, just to sort of portray that very sort of almost like disturbing silence that like after a while almost like gets under your skin. At least it does to me. I mean, maybe I'm a bit sort of. I'm always like the person in the room that I just sort of like filling up every second with talking. So maybe this is like extra unpleasant for me, but that's the way I look at least at silence.
Just really a quick answer, just but and I've asked always the last question. In 1 month, the house going to be on Netflix, and it's going to be a new thing because you're not going to be in a theater filled with people.
No.
How do you feel about just this experience of having something that will be on TV and or all over the world, but without
I
you?
have no idea, to be honest. It's like I have like, I don't know what to expect. It's really new to me. I haven't even sort of tried and digest it. I think it's because I'm really used to me it's so much more. It's a lot about just sort of watching something together with an audience at the cinema, and that could be quite scary and unpleasant as well. I mean, it's not that I enjoy it fully, but it's still like a very sort of strong, a very sort of powerful thing to do, and it's like a very sort of definite, like, okay, I'm leaving this to you guys now. It's not mine anymore. But this just sort of just leaving it to this platform, and but at the same time to an audience that's like the entire world at the same time, if they'd want to. It's very abstract and very like, I have no idea. I hope that we will be able to watch it at the cinema at some point, at least. I have no idea about the
Distribution,
the distribution, but I really hope so. It will be fun, really. But it's it's exciting and a bit really abstract. I don't know what to expect from it.
Well, thank you so much,
Yeah,
and thanks for
thank
coming
you.
to Paris. It was nice
Thanks so much.
to have you here. Thank you.